Welcome to A Place of Yes, a podcast about how I moved through my darkest hour. And for me, that was in channeling my grief into good. Welcome to the show.
We want to have a conversation about your takeaways from your first year in podcasting. Hi, listeners. The voice you are hearing is that of me, Christine O'Donnell. I have been working as the executive producer for A Place of Yes for the past year. Now that we are about to wrap up season 1, I have all these questions for Heather about what she has learned in your first year in podcasting. Where should we start? Is there like a lesson that pops out of you?
The biggest lesson that I'm bringing into season 2 is the idea of not being so tied to what I think I want to come from it, but letting it go where it goes, like managing it both. Because I think in the beginning, I was didn't know what I was doing, so it was a little loosey-goosey. And then I start to figure out that I could control the narrative a little bit. So I got kind of into that. And then I realized it's a really a merging of the two. So I feel like my biggest takeaway that I'm super excited is to figure out how to balance those. Like have a theme, have an idea, have a goal to come out of the episode, but then also let my guests talk, be quiet, let them dictate it, and get uncomfortable with silence.
I mean, I think that those are some great lessons. I often compare podcasting to jumping out of a plane, skydiving.
Which I've never done.
Me neither, and don't plan to. But I feel like oftentimes if you're going skydiving, you've got to, meet with your instructor. You gotta, have a parachute on you, maybe a whole person with a parachute on you. Like there's a lot of planning and preparation that happens before the jumping out of the plane, but you still have to jump out of the plane.
And once you're there, you just got to commit and do it.
And also you don't really know what's going to happen when you jump out of the plane. There's got to be part of you that's kind of like, what will be, and you have to take a chance.
It's a risk. It's funny because I'm excited for season 2. And I think, you and I talked about this a little bit, is because I don't want to, I think with everything you do, right? It's kind of like you said with jumping on the plane, like you've got to prepare. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it to the best of your ability. We committed to doing this, so we're doing it. So in season 1, there'd be things where I was like, oh, that worked really well. So then I was trying to recreate, like if one episode recorded really well, then I was like, oh, let me do that the next time. And that doesn't allow for like kind of the magic or the moments or like what you're talking about to happen. A little bit in the middle of season 1, I was scripting it a little more because I felt the control freak in me felt like that way I could make sure it went the best it could, when in fact, it prevented it from sometimes going deeper.
So was there anything about this entire experience being a podcaster that has surprised you?
So it's funny, every time you say that, I don't actually think of myself as a podcaster. It makes me giggle still, and I don't know what that is. I think what surprises me about this whole experience is how much I really love it. I love thinking deeper about things that I have not thought about for a long time. I love the journalistic aspect of it because I feel like 17, 18-year-old Heather, when I was going to college, wanted to be a journalist and just never did that. And it was a whole avenue that I don't know, I don't live a life of like woulda, shoulda, coulda. I don't live a life of regret. But I always wonder, like, what if I had made different choices and stuck to that? And where would I have been? And I feel like now, at this age, at this point in my life, I'm sort of going back to some degree being who I thought I was going to be when I was younger. And I like that. Like, I think it's fun. And I like when you can do something where you can prepare and work hard for it and then do it and then have a good result come out. And I like that about podcasting in general. I feel like I know who I'm going to interview. We schedule it. I do my prep for it. I figure out enough information so that we can have a guideline for a good conversation. And then we have a good conversation and then you see a final product. Like I love the whole process. When we started, I didn't even know what the process was, right? Like I didn't even really know. I kind of came in here and was like, okay, tell me what to do.
Was there an episode that was a turning point for you?
So it's interesting because I feel like there were several episodes that were turning points in the way that the first few we recorded, I think I just had really comfortable conversations because they were people I knew or they're people that I was connected with and it flowed. And then there were a couple people who were less comfortable in the camera. And that was like a turning point for me in the sense that I had to work on those skills because not everybody is comfortable. It's only as easy as you can get your guest to feel comfortable. So that was a turning point in that I had to think about things differently. There were a few really pleasant surprises. Like I go back to the Annie Orenstein, the Always a Sibling. I wasn't sure about that one. And then I really just loved that conversation.
It's like every conversation has a special place.
Yes.
Like, and to me, that's the sign of a good show. And it feels like there was a real genuine connection that happened every single time.
And what I loved about what we sort of did early on was they were Jake's families and they were people like very deliberately chosen that I had a connection with. And I think that was nice for me because I had a little bit of a learning curve in a very safe space. And that helped me kind of find my way.
I think the Kate episode, Jake
Oh,
Sanny,
okay. Yeah.
that was a turning point, I think.
Like in connection or in learning or in like, what do you mean?
I feel like that episode was, in a way, like kind of healing for her.
Oh, I think it was for her for sure because she said things that I didn't realize she still like, she thought I was mad at her,
Yeah.
and it was, like, the farthest thing from ever.
And I think that as a producer, as an outsider who's just like listening to these stories and then thinking about how the audience will receive them,
Yep.
it felt like such a gift to witness the relationship between the two of you and the relationship that you both separately had with Jake, which was very like it was just very apparent that you both loved him so deeply, and seeing that there was some resolution that had never happened during that conversation.
All of the things you're saying, I think, are so true about, like, the resolution and all of that, but there's so many reasons why Kate is so dear to my heart, and most of it is the way that she loved my boy so much, but at her wedding, she had this table with people who, who weren't at the wedding that she felt should have been, like her grandmother, like, kind of obvious people, and there was Jakey, like, there was a picture as Jake's mom, it was just so nice to have him there.
I mean, I think he was there.
Oh, yeah. He was
He might
here
have been
earlier
here
when you threw
earlier.
this. Yeah, yeah. He knocked
He's
that
like,
thing
push
over.
record. So I mean, and then there was like when you and Brian at the beginning, like had conversations that like you had never had.
Yes.
Like,
I think you're right. That was, and I don't know if that was like a podcast turning point, but that was certainly a turning point in my life and in my marriage, right? Well, we have had a strong relationship in marriage post Jake, and we've talked about that a lot on this podcast about how that is, kind of rare. But then after that, and after kind of hashing out some of those things and having some of those conversations, we subsequently at home, like he had said a couple times, like, I didn't realize you thought that way, or now I hear that when you know, what I mean, it was really good for us. So that was a turning point really in life, not just even a place of yes.
the fact that it was captured and was in part because of a podcast, like it is kind of mind blowing.
I was going to say it's wild.
Like it's wild. I think when I first got into podcasting, I kind of thought podcasting was a joke,
Yeah.
like, or a hobby, or not actually something that could be a job. The more I did it, I was like, this is a powerful medium that can be translated to the world. Like it's really powerful.
It is funny to
It's just,
think of podcasting though, because
right. You said you giggle when you call yourself a podcaster.
I do, because it just like I remember, and I feel like I'm always a little behind the 8 ball with anything technology, right? Like I remember like some of my friends had email before I even knew what it was. I was like, what are you talking about, electric mail? Like, I don't understand what this is. So people would be like, hey, have you listened to this podcast? And I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, years and years and years ago. And then all of a sudden, I don't even remember the first one I would listen to. I think This American Life. No, Serial. That was the first podcast I listened to. And I remember being like, I'm not a huge audiobook person. I like to read books, but this is like this mix, right? Because it's like you're listening to these stories, but it's the true conversation. And I really just liked it. And then it just became this like idea, like of what a way to share stories in what seems like such an intimate way, but anybody can listen to it. So I feel like I was so late to the game. I like it. It's cool. It's both personal and public all at the same time. I dig it.
I dig it.
I dig
I'm cool
it.
with it. Okay. Other questions for you about podcasting. If someone out there is thinking about starting a podcast, do you have advice for them? Like, what would you be like? Okay, here's what you should do. Now that you are a
Now that
award-winning
well,
podcaster.
duh. Oh, I think I'm the last person that should be giving advice on anything sometimes. And I think in the first season, I struggle is not the right word, but we've toyed with this, right? I think you gotta keep your, like, North Star, right? You gotta figure out what you're trying to say and what people seem to resonate with, and sometimes you deviate, like, 'cause sometimes you're like, "Oh, this person wants to be on it, and this seems cool," or like, "Hey, this could be a good connection." So but I think and you've taught me this, you always have to kinda come back to what you think your audience wants. Like, you've gotta have a focus that's small, and I think in the beginning, with most things, people have a really broad idea of what they wanna do.
That's a really great way to explain it. Would you like to tell the audience the nickname for your microphone?
Big Daddy. It used to be a Big Daddy, now it's kind of a
Medium daddy.
yes, skinny daddy.
It's a skinny daddy. Okay, okay.
On that
On
note.
that note, I would say something that I love to hear as your producer is that you get a lot of feedback from your audience.
I get
Like
so much feedback.
stuff that I don't get. Where is this feedback coming from? What are people saying?
At first, I so much meaning it's probably not as much as, like, some people get, but because I half the time I know my mom, dad, and my husband listen to so when all these other people, like, email me so sometimes it's email. A lot of time, it's, like, Facebook Messenger or Instagram message. One of my best friends growing up, Chelsea, we grew up around the corner from each other, best friends in high school. She called me out of nowhere and was like, "I love listening to your podcast because I hear your voice and I feel like you're my neighbor again." She lives in California. So just these, like, some people I know and some people I don't know. I feel like I have had this horrible loss, but I feel like I've turned it around and live a pretty positive, happy life, and if I can help other people do that, whether I know them or don't know them, I love that, and these little tidbits that I get back make me think that these conversations are helping. 'Cause, I've talked to you about this, like, I wanna make sure this is never like a vanity project where I'm just like, "Hey, here's Heather talking again." I've had some really interesting feedback that makes me feel like it's helpful, and then a friend of mine's like, "I love it because I learn things." And I learned she's like, "My go-to was always just to send flowers," because I was like, "Oh, that's what you're supposed to do when someone dies." She's like, "But in one of your conversations when you guys talked about how that's annoying and it makes your house feel like a funeral home, it made me rethink what I do for people when they're grieving, and what I think is nice isn't necessarily what they need." I like that I'm helping people that are in the same shitty situation I am, but I also like that people are listening and figuring out how to be better supports to their people who need it.
Does it feel weird to you that I feel like I have a relationship with Jake even though I never met him?
No, I love that so much. I love that this has been another way in which I can keep Jake very present, and I think that like, Jake is guiding me in who I am. I love that people recognize him in the role that he has in my life, and I love that, like, and I do think he kind of threw that thing over there earlier. He's 17, he probably I don't know, maybe it was something I said, he probably stormed out of here. Oh, he's 18 now, I take that back.
When was his birthday?
May 4th.
Are there any other takeaways from your first year in podcasting?
As I think about season 2, right, and we've had some of these conversations, it's funny, in the beginning, I think we're so focused on music. I can keep the music, I can lose the music to me now, I'm like, I kinda like it, like, it sorta works. We've done a lot of experimenting with, like, the short covers and, like, the covers of the YouTube and the covers of the show, and I now find myself looking at other podcasts and what they do. I'm excited, I think, for this, like, intermission to work on some of that and figure out where we wanna land, because I do think it's great that we kind of bounced around and looked at different things, but I feel like now season 2, we might be more established.
Could you imagine doing a podcast without Bright Sighted?
I have said this 1,000 times, absolutely not. I think the best decision I made was recognizing that there was 0 chance of me doing this on my own. Like, when you listen or watch a podcast, it seems so seamless and easy and, "Oh, it's just 2 friends with microphones talking around the dining room table." And it makes you feel like you can buy that kit on Amazon and you can set it up. And the fact of the matter is it's not that. From things that you don't even think about, like, ad spends. I didn't even know what that was. I still don't explain it all that well, but, like, just these things that are behind the scenes to make it legit, to the editing, to the lighting, to the SEO, like, these things, like, all of it. Like, yes, you could do this alone in your couch, it would go nowhere. And I think that's what's misleading about podcasts is because so many people are like, everyone has a podcast and everyone can and should, and it's great to have one. But if you want to reach people, you need to do it with people who know what they're doing. And that's why I'm so glad we connected because I just feel like I couldn't have done it. I would have lasted like 2 episodes and been like, okay, this sucks.
It's way more work than people
I
realize.
think people have no idea because the conversations seem seamless and they're not. I mean, I love it when I know that we've done an episode that needs minimal editing, but minimal editing is still editing. Like it's still cleaned up and it's still sound adjusted and all these things that I don't understand, but there's a lot that goes into it, even when we've sort of nailed the recording. And then sometimes you don't nail the recording or you talk out of order and you have to, but even then, good editing makes it, there's no way that you could do it on your own. Or I certainly couldn't.
I do think it's possible for people to do it on their own and
Just not me.
just no. I'm not saying it like that. It's just like I think that the expectation that it's just sitting up, like just setting things up and then speaking and then you go viral, like that is rare. I'm not
Yeah.
saying it's impossible.
No, and it certainly has happened, but I don't think
it's rare. And even the people who have had that happen usually have some experience in the media world.
Well, and the
So.
other thing I find super interesting is like, when I look at like the YouTube channel and stuff, and we've had some shorts that have, a good chunk of views, and then we have some that have like 6.
Mhm.
And I don't always feel like I understand why some have, like, there's that one of me that's got like 7 or 8,000 views from early on. And then there's some that I think are brilliant and they have like 400 or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just an interesting world because I feel like sometimes you can know a lot more than I do, SEO and all the things that I don't know, and it's still so hard to hit it. And sometimes something hits and you don't always understand why. Like, and sometimes it doesn't hit and you don't understand why. So that's kind of also what I think is it's just part of life, but it's interesting because it's not a formula. And you were saying about like, have I learned from other things? One of the things I've learned is kind of that there's no formula. So like for some episodes I would kind of follow a structure and it just was awesome. It was like we were like, high five, great episode. And then I kind of try and follow that because it worked and it fell a little flatter. It wasn't the best interview. So I don't want to say hit or miss because that's not it, but it's really being able to adapt and figure it out and do the best you can all the time. And sometimes it's going to hit and sometimes it's not, but it's okay because you keep filming another episode.
I do think that there's like always deconstructing that can happen. Like we can test it. If we fail, we can try again.
Try again.
Well, I have one more actually.
Uh-oh.
How does it feel to be a finalist for a Signal Award?
I think it feels so awesome. I am super giggly about it still because this is going to be so corny, but I feel like we worked really hard and we did a really good thing. And I feel like someone paid attention to that. And that just makes me feel good. Thank you for listening to A Place of Yes. Please follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend, anybody who might benefit from listening to this. It would make a world of difference if we could just reach more people and share the work that we do and the stories we want to tell. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave us a thumbs up or leave us a comment. We would appreciate all that you can do. If you really like this episode, please share it with a friend or two.